What was that learning curve like for you stepping into this leadership role?
I had the unfair advantage of my dad as a veterinarian and ran a business. And so I had that unfair advantage of being able to learn some of these basic skills from him. How do you ask for money? How do you provide service? How do you create more value than what you're charging? Maybe you set up a payment plan for them, but it doesn't mean that you have to give it away for free. I learned a lot of business sense from that I was able to move on to my current practice. You're going to buy a practice, take your kids with. It's a great way for them to learn how to do that. Or what does it feel to sit in a bank corporate room and ask for a loan? What does that feel like? What paperwork do you have to fill out? And most of the time it's like, well, I don't even know what to fill out.
Welcome to the first episode of The Doers, the podcast where we dive into the real stories of building, struggling, and thriving in the business of dentistry. I'm your host, Dan Hall, and I'm excited to take you on this journey and get started exploring the struggles, the victories, and the lessons learned from the leaders in the trenches running successful dental practices. Today, I'm joined by Katie Post, the CEO of Northwest Dental Group. Welcome to the show, Katie.
Thank you.
So Northwest Dental Group's a multi-site practice based in Rochester, Minnesota, and serves the community.
Yep.
Just curious, how did you start your journey and find your way to dentistry?
Actually, kind of a sad story. I was on a date, and he wanted to go to the pre-dental club meeting, and then we were going to go to a party. And so I went with and walked in and knew everybody there and got elected vice president and of the pre-dental club. And it sort of began and started from there. It's actually the perfect job for me. It's the only job I can talk all day and nobody can talk back.
So what is the pre-dental club? That's maybe something I'm not familiar with.
So they have it for undergrad, and you can go and you learn. You got to take impressions on each other or make whitening trays, or now they do a lot of 3D printing or digital scanning, and it's an opportunity for kids in undergrad really to get some exposure to what it might feel like to be a dentist, to see, do I want to do this long term? A lot of times, like the pre-dental club students at the U of M will come down and shadow me or spend time with me in the office. They do different outings where they'll try to do volunteer stuff together, and it's just a way to feel like, do I want to be a dentist? And
fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a cool start, though. So when you think back to those early days of stepping into the leadership side of dentistry, what surprised you most going into that role about running a dental practice and then evolving into multiple practices?
So I started as an associate. My husband matched at Mayo in Rochester. And so you just have to go wherever you go. And I didn't think that we would be there more than 3 years. And so I took an associate position with the idea that I would be there 3 years. What happened at first was I would walk out. I had 1 to 2 patients a day, maybe. And the receptionist would have her feet up on the desk and she would be flipping through magazines, taking out these like little flyers in the middle, or had some excuse for why she could do that. And I was the one welcoming patients. So what surprised me probably the most is how it felt to transition from being friends with everybody and genuinely liking everybody to being a leader. And it's not that you don't want them to like you, but it's a different sort of person that you have to show up with. You almost have to let go of this one to be that leader, to step up. I think people really want leaders. They want to know that they can trust you when times are tough. They don't want to have to be responsible for making the tough decisions or for taking the fall if things aren't going well.
Okay.
But I also think they want somebody who's going to support them, entertain them, all of the above. That's all part of that leadership. You think of, I just got back from Rome, and you think of the empires and what they did to motivate that many people to follow the Roman Empire. And there's a lot of little facets. And on a little micro scale, what we're doing is not much different.
Okay, interesting. So when you go back to that time, are there any resources that you relied upon heavily as you were kind of charting this new territory of shifting gears to being the leader, still got to be a friend, but give them some guidance?
I was so blessed that in the dental community, dentists want to help other dentists. And I think that when you're by yourself, you feel intimidated to call and ask, or but like, I love it. I get phone calls all the time. I love those calls. I'm willing to share anything that I have or knowledge that I have. And I was really blessed to have 5 or 6 key dentists that were older, had experience, and had walked through things. And they were willing to share everything with me. And I don't know if it's, sometimes I come off a little blonde or homeless, but that they were really trying to help me. But it was great stuff, and I would swipe it from all of them and try to implement as much as I could.
Oh, awesome. So just talking to your peers,
Yeah.
taking some pearls of wisdom,
Yep.
applying it.
Yep. I also like to swipe from other businesses. So
Okay.
I am in a business group called C12. It's for Christian leaders, and it's from business people from all over the world. But you get a small group of 10, and I will swipe knowledge from them and what they're doing. One might be from a guy who's running a video company to a guy who's running an international company that's pricing potatoes, to a guy who is, running a factory that's making safety harnesses. I can steal stuff that they're doing and apply that to dentistry.
So what's an example of something you would steal from somebody making harnesses or growing potatoes?
Yeah.
Like,
So with the harnesses, they make contracts with
Okay.
people for a year out. And if that contract fails, then they have to adjust their production line to still make the same profit or bottom line. And watching how they do that, and what I didn't recognize is that payroll is really your biggest overhead. And so you limit that payroll, or that's the fastest way you can go at decreasing that. The other thing they do then is they do huge marketing campaigns, but directly to those buyers who are going to buy these in those contracts. And how do they set up those contracts? That's not much different than how I'm going to set up a contract with my associate, right?
Okay.
How I'm
Yeah.
going to recruit them, how I'm going to try to keep that relationship, and how I want to keep them happy, because they could leave at any day. I want them so happy that they don't want to leave. And how do you keep that relationship going? But if they do leave or the production does drop, what do I have to cut? What are my moves? How fast do I have to do them? And the thing is, I think sometimes people wait too long to make those adjustments, and then they get burned fast. COVID was a great example of that. The faster you made those decisions, the better off you were long-term coming out of there.
Fascinating. So looking back at the early days,
Yeah.
getting started in dentistry, eventually moving into the role of CEO of Northwest Dental Group, what's one of your fondest memories from
Yeah.
those times in the early?
At the time, I had one of the people I was blessed with was this Dr. Sperling, who was the senior partner. There were 2 partners in my practice. One was going to step down. He was going to work as an associate, but give up his partnership. And I was going to buy that out. And I started looking at the books, and we are every year making less money, but they had automatic raises in. And so our profit was just shrinking every year. And I had said, I will only buy in if we hire a consultant. And he's like, we don't need a consultant. I said, there's 2 of us for us to agree on. I want to get somebody else. He went out and hired 3 people.
Oh.
And one of them had a conference in Texas. And so he went with his 2 assistants, and he had been a dentist for 20 years already. He goes, and one of my favorite moments is he, up to that point, didn't think that we had a problem. I thought we had a problem. He didn't think we had a problem. The guy on stage calls our office live in front of 200 people, and our receptionist refers him to a different office in town.
Oh, goodness. Is this the one with the feet up on the desk?
Yes.
Flipping through the magazine?
Yes. And he came back and had to grovel to me that I was right, that we had a real problem that we had to address. And I think then it was the first, that ship was going in a direction. It was a big ship, but it was like, how do we turn this in a positive direction? And just sort of recognizing what the problem is the first step. And that's really hard to do.
Yeah, great story. I mean, sometimes it's fascinating to see, to learn those lessons for individuals. They sometimes have to seek out another source for any individual. Interesting. So every leader hits that moment when they're running their business and feels like everything's on the line.
Yep.
Right? This is the
moment.
The breaking moment. COVID, like you brought up, is
Yep.
a potential good example there. What's one of those toughest challenges you've had to face being the leader of Northwest Dental Group?
Yep. one Friday night, something triggered when I was looking through the books, and I found out that our bookkeeper had embezzled over 100,000. And just like it hadn't been on my radar. And then once it was. And I didn't quite know the full extent of it, but like, I had been working so hard, had huge loans to pay, every day felt like I was pushing this boulder up a mountain. And then to find that out, and I really felt like everything was just like throw your hands up in the air and walk away. And, you can't handle this. And what do? Do you call the police? Do you do, how do you handle this? How do you find out? And luckily I had a good lawyer who was great about like calming me down and letting me figure out, okay, let's bring this person in so they can deep dive and really find out what's going on and how can we approach this in a way that we can be effective. And one of the best pieces of advice that they gave us is you can take this to court, but the amount of money that you're going to spend and you're never going to see that money back is how do you let go of that and move forward? And once I did, it just totally projected the whole practice because then I just went after it, and I think I see other dentists say they have an associate leave.
Okay.
And they take one of the hygienists because they start dating and they go 5 miles away and start a practice. And the dentist is so upset because it's within their, clause and they're stealing all their patients and all this. They're putting so much energy towards this person who left. If they would take that same energy and just put it towards who's there in their practice that day, growing their practice, they're going to be so much better off than they are focusing their energy on the wrong thing. So I think that's one of the things I really learned from that. And that lawyer gave me that good advice. I used it again, maybe 5 years after that, I got audited.
Okay.
And I had been paying a tax attorney for 2 years, a retainer every month. And it wasn't until I went to the auditor and directly negotiated with the auditor, and the auditor's like, I can't settle for under this amount with you. That was less than I had already paid the attorney for all the retainer fees. And so, like those are lessons learned. Like instead of putting so much energy or dramatizing it, just cutting it and moving forward and then outproduce it on the other end. And that's worked really well for me.
Smart. And that's like the guidance from that attorney that you give me that. Okay, awesome. This kind of rolls into my next question. I hear from a lot of dentists that they're not prepared for the business side of ownership.
Not at all.
I'm curious, what was that learning curve like for you stepping into this leadership role?
Yeah.
And running this big practice?
Yeah. I had the unfair advantage of my dad as a veterinarian and ran a business. And so I had that unfair advantage of being able to learn some of these basic skills from him. As a kid, he would take me to collect money from farmers during the 80s. And so nobody's going to shoot a guy who has a 8-year-old blonde daughter with him, And
good strategy.
It's a great strategy. It's really aggressive, but it's a strategy. And I think some of those things were blessings for me to learn. How do you ask for money? How do you provide service? How do you create more value than what you're charging? And how do you recognize, like even in that scenario, they're human too. So maybe you set up a payment plan for them, or maybe you do whatever you have to do to help them, but it doesn't mean that you have to give it away for free. And I learned a lot of business sense from that I was able to move on to my current practice. I think most of it, though, unfortunately for my team, was like trial by failure. And as I failed, I was able to learn from it, get a little better, fail again, get a little better, fail again. And I just am one of those people who doesn't quit. And so I was able to break through.
So not afraid to fail, just keep moving along. Yeah. It's amazing that your dad did that. What a life lesson, right? So many parents are afraid to talk to their kids about money, and you're out there.
I know. Another blessing that he did that I didn't recognize is if we went to buy a farm, I went with to the bank. And so I would see how you apply for a loan, or how you went and bid on a farm, or how you negotiate if you're going to buy it directly from them. And so I didn't recognize, I do that with my kids, and I didn't recognize that that's not commonplace to do that. But it's a great way, if you're going to buy a practice, take your kids with. It's a great way for them to learn how to do that. Or what does it feel to sit in a bank corporate room and ask for a loan? What does that feel like? What paperwork do you have to have? What do you fill out? And most of the time it's like, well, I don't even know what I'm supposed to fill out. The kids understand that. They still think you're great. They're
Sure.
learning with you. And but then they don't have to have it be their first time when it's their turn to do that.
It's a good piece of advice for some of those listeners that might be going through that process. Okay, so we see the learning curve was big. I'm curious today, what does that learning curve look like for
Yeah.
you when you implement something new or change some processes or buy a new practice?
So it's funny. I was listening to a podcast on the way up here, and it all goes back to a few basic things. And it's like soap, wash, and rinse, and you forget that. You get off in these weeds or these little details and you forget it's about quality of how you're providing more value than you're charging your patients. It's about, or that high customer service. It's about new patients. It's about retention of patients, some of those basic things, and going back and focusing on those things. I love the analogy McDonald's. One of their big successes, if you watch that movie, is about how clean they keep the bathrooms. So they put up McDonald's on highways. They're like, people are going to stop if the bathroom is clean, and then they'll end up buying food from us. What a genius concept, right? And so we just have to have, what is our thing that makes people want to stop?
Well, curious, what is that thing?
Ours is cookies.
Okay.
Which is, everybody gives me a hard time that we have warm cookies, but really, all of my big emergencies have been low blood sugar, because somebody will take their diabetic medication and their teeth are clean. So they're going to get their teeth cleaned. They don't want to brush. They come in, and then pretty soon they're like, Dr. Post, this patient's drunk, and it's 7:00 in the morning. They just have low blood sugar. You give them a cookie. And we've had 2 separate occasions in 2 different buildings where the patient had low blood sugar and drove in and their car hit the building.
2 times, not
2 times, not just once, twice.
So good move on the cookies.
Yes.
So I'm curious, like you've talked a lot about some of the resources and how you've worked your way through some of these challenges in those early days and some of the fondest memories. I'm curious, when you look at your leadership approach, especially as somebody who runs a multi-site, you're balancing multi-doctors, you're balancing your teams and all these different personalities.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah. So I love the EOS system.
Okay.
And we run that pretty by the book. So every week we do an L10 at the exact same time for the exact same amount of time. We do, we do weekly meetings, we do monthly meetings, we do quarterly meetings, we do annual retreats. I do a quarterly retreat 2-day by myself every quarter, and I'll go somewhere where I'm just by myself for 2 days, and I have like a system of what I do when I'm there. And it's taking the time to put a block in your schedule to think. And if you've ever read Think and Grow Rich, it's one of the big things in there is that you need time to think, and you need that time to plan with your team. We really try. I don't know what it's like to set up a payment plan for a patient, because I'm drilling on the teeth, right? So I have a leader who that's what their focus is, and that's what they're training the rest of the team on.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I know you use some acronyms there and some abbreviations. For those that might not be familiar with EOS or an L10, well, what is the underpinning philosophy that you're speaking of? Because I know you're saying your office manager's in it, maybe setting up payment plans, membership plans.
So if you go to read the book Traction, and the book Traction is a system called EOS. It's all over YouTube or everywhere, and it's a system of how you run your leadership table. But it's basically from the top down. How do you communicate with all of the members of your team? How do you set goals? How do you steer the ship in the right direction and keep it going? Because we technically have 4 locations, but then 12 doctors. That's a lot of providers and then a lot more hygienists. How do you keep them all going in the same direction, rowing at the same time when they're not even in the same building? And that's by having those same set goals that trickle down. So, but each leadership team they know what the goals are and the roles of the people above them, and then they know their responsibility, and then they'll delegate down below them. So everybody in the whole practice has a goal. They get bonused off of that goal. All of that set up.
Well, thanks for expanding on that. So it sounds like you got a good system in place.
Yeah.
How did you find your leadership style, so to say?
So that, again, is failure and trial and error. I think I've grown into it more and more as I've gotten older. I was a little bit too aggressive when I was younger. You're constantly shifting and changing. And I was a little bit probably too passive for a while. At different stages of my life, like my husband was sick for a while, I actually saw the production in our practice plateau. It's the only time that I've seen that. But you think that you're not going to make that big of a difference, but if you're not showing up and you don't have the energy, that energy doesn't spread to everybody else. And so you have to create systems, and I've worked on that since then, the last 8 years, is how do I get other people in that position to create energy, even if I can't? And so that we constantly have that flow going.
Oh, good process. Yeah. So there's a replacement, so to say, if Katie's got to be out for a bit of time.
Yep.
So I love that you're talking a lot about change, talking about adopting failure. Dentistry has changed a lot in the last decade. There's insurance pressures, patient expectations, technology changes.
Yeah.
What have you noticed as one of the biggest changes in our industry?
So I think the biggest change that I noticed, and I got this from the owner of Great Clips, is she switched so that now you can check on your phone and you can get in a queue. So I want to get my hair cut. I can check in, and I know in 30 minutes I'm going to show up and it's going to be my turn. I'm going to get it cut. So one is I don't want to schedule an appointment ahead of time. I just want to be seen today because I feel like I need a haircut. And I don't want to have to talk to a person. I want to be able to do it online. And I want to be able to just know what time to show up and walk on so I don't have to sit in a waiting room. Dentistry 5 years ago, you talked to a receptionist, you made an appointment 3 weeks in advance, you went and sat in a waiting room, right? Every picture of a dental office is of somebody sitting in a waiting room. And so how do we change how we look at it so that we can create an opportunity that you can go on your phone, schedule an appointment, know that you can show up at this time and walk in and go back and be seen. And you don't have to wait 3 weeks to get in. That's tricky with our schedule. How do we make that work? And that's really what we've been working on now, is how can we meet people where they want to be today, which is instant gratification.
Okay, so you're still working on that. Sounds like a work in progress.
I think we're getting closer because now you can schedule on our website. You can schedule online, and you can pick a time. You can pick the provider. You can pick the service, and you can just show up at that time and walk in.
Has it been good adoption?
It's been a great adoption. So Mayo is doing that. And they found within months of switching to online, I think 70% of their appointments went from in-person to online scheduling. And now you can do on-demand doctor appointments where you can just click on the app and get in 15 minutes, you're talking to an MD on your phone instead of having to walk into the clinic. People are wanting this. They're going to want that in dentistry. Right now, we can't do teledentistry to the level that we need, but there are a lot of things that we can do to make that instant gratification better. We just have to look at it differently.
What a great resource to be near as well, too. That's right. You're right next to Mayo Clinic, one of the best healthcare facilities
it's incredible.
World, watching trends.
Of what they're doing.
Yes.
So, and now they're doing, they have robots walking around, checking on people. You check in with a monitor.
Wait a second.
Oh, yeah.
There's a robot roaming
literally in the halls. If you follow it on TikTok, you'll see it. And when you go in, you check in with a kiosk, not with a person. I know a lot of the traditionalists, they struggle with that. All the younger generation, that's what they want. And so they're used to working on their phone. They're not used to, I still crave, I want to go meet you in your office and talk person to person. It's not that there's not people that don't want that, but there's a lot of people that are happy with that kiosk. That also cuts down on a lot of our overhead. So how can we use AI to answer our phones, to help with our notes, to help with treatment planning? How can we use all of that technology that can help feed us, cut down on our overhead, but also increase our efficiency, but more importantly, feed what our patients
Okay,
want?
yeah, that makes sense. This kind of rolls into my next question is, what's your take on the future of private dental practices and groups?
Yeah, my take is there's going to be two splits. We're almost to 70% saturation with the corporation buyouts, and they are buying. I think it's starting to slow down now a little bit, but they've bought up a ton of practices, and then there's this little charming, which I'm hoping to fit into, private little boutiques where we provide high-end private dentistry. And that's the kind of dentistry that I want to provide, where I get a say and the patient gets a say in what kind of treatment that they want and what they get, versus some insurance company dictating it or some corporation dictating it. And I think it makes it a lot easier to sleep at night. It makes it easier to do the really fun, cool stuff. And what I call fun and cool is like implants, surgical extractions, dental sleep appliances, some of those fun things.
Okay. And you feel the patients are going to drive some of this change for you?
I think so. Yeah. I think insurance is driving a lot of it.
They are driving that change too.
Yeah.
The more boutique or the
They're
corporate
driving it to the corporate.
Okay.
But then I think a lot of people recognize that that's not the kind of dentistry that they want to have. And then they're willing to pay private to go separate. Just like a lot of patients have their in-network doctor, but they're willing to pay Mayo Clinic for high quality care.
Sure. That's great. Again, go back to that Mayo Clinic. You have to bounce all this around, being in that community. So this kind of rolls in. You talked a lot about care and some of the treatments you'd like to do in that boutique setting. This is one topic I hear pretty often when I'm having conversations with practice owners or individuals that own groups, is balancing that clinical side of dentistry with the demands of running a successful business. How do you personally approach that balance to ensure you're supporting your clinical team while still seeing that business success?
I am super lucky. The team I'm surrounded by is amazing. And I think Henry Ford said, I don't know how to do that, but I know somebody who does. And I'm really good at delegating that to people who are good at that. So that's super helpful. My other trick is I use a lot of block scheduling, not with seeing patients, but I do that. My calendar, every minute is blocked for what I'm going to do. If it's working out, if it's meditation, if it's family time, if it's meeting time, what those meetings are. If I want a marketing meeting, I'm going to put it on the schedule. If I'm going to do a commercial or a podcast, I'm going to put it on the schedule. And I'm going to be intentional about it because then it gets done. If I don't put it on the schedule, it'll never get done.
Smart move. Good tip for those listeners to take away.
Yeah.
Block your time.
Yeah.
Not just from a production standpoint, but just your personal components on there as well too. So I'm wondering, when we look at change, because we talked a lot about that today, how the industry is changing, how you've gone through a lot of change at Northwest Dental Group. What role has technology played in the change that you've seen or maybe have adopted at Northwest Dental Group?
Oh, it has made my life so much easier. One, digital scanners, how fast. I see a lot of special needs patients. So an autistic 15-year-old chips her front tooth. I can put a scanner in, take it out, put it in, take it out, put it in, take it out until I can scan that tooth and we can get the crown made to put in. I can't do that if I'm doing PVS because it's hard for them to tolerate it to sit there for 2.5 minutes and let it harden up. And so the scanners have made that treatment so much easier. I also personally believe they're a lot more, the margins are better, the fit is better, the colors are better. A lot of the issues I had with PVS have gone away now that I've gone to digital scanning. Same way with using cone beam for endo, cone beam for implant placement. 3D printing, we're using Sprint Ray printers to do bite plates and retainers and restorations. And as that change has come, I think we're providing better care, higher value care, than we were before. But then leading into the technical side of it with computers, when I started, we didn't have a computer in the entire office. That's how old I am, 20 years ago. They literally were using a book to schedule. Today, it's a third of my overhead is on computers and software and all of the technology. So like VoiceStack, when they call in, it automatically recognizes the patient's phone number. It pulls the chart. It combines them. It translates that phone call so that they can immediately have that go into CareStack into their record, which helps them to, it just makes it more efficient. The doctor can know exactly what the patient said. And it used to be this, oh, the call center got it wrong. And they said this, it was their front tooth and really it was their back tooth that's been broken for 3 months. But then they can go back and look at the transcript and say, oh, that is what the patient told them. And so that makes it more efficient. Like I said, the scheduling online has really, our patients love that. They use that a ton. We haven't started doing it, but we're really close. Just having the digital notes took away a lot of time that I spent writing out notes because you have the note blocks. And I think a lot of details get put in because there's a spot to add it in versus before where you would have to think of it and write it, where now that's going to all go to AI transcription that you click a button. My husband clicks a button. He walks in to see his patient. He does a full physical exam and the AI will filter out all the personal stuff and do the soap note for him. It's just incredible.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, I love your stories there, how it's great that it's increasing the bottom line, but you also have the win for the patient, right? The autistic patient where they're not having to
gag on the stuff and pull it out. And it's like, it's not even an option. We're just pulling the tooth, which is what we did. And now we can actually fix it. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And just making the whole process easier and seamless. So there's a win for the patient.
Yeah.
That's great. So
I would say one win I didn't add that is just huge is patient trust and confidence. So when you digitally scan and they're getting a crown, they look at it and they're like, wow, that is cool. I have never seen anything like that. One, they think that you are like really techie. They don't know I can barely turn my laptop on. And my assistant is really techie. And however, it does look cool. And I can show them, hey, this is the tooth we're fixing and what I fixed. But do you see this crack line here? This one's going to be next. Or did you see this here? That's what I was telling you about. And they're like, can we fix that today? Why, I'm already numb. Right? And so because they can see it, they can trust you. If you don't show them, they never think you're cool. They don't think the value's cool. They don't talk to their friends about going to you, and they don't see the value of getting the other stuff fixed.
Well, that's amazing that they're being proactive about their oral health.
Yes.
And kind of taken away from you having to have that conversation with
100%. It's just putting it in their shoes.
I'm just curious, if you had a magic wand.
Yeah.
If there is one operational headache in dentistry that you can make disappear tomorrow, what would it be?
Patient complaints.
Patient complaints.
It's always so emotional and it's so hard. And, I think some of the times it's really valid. Like, it might be that they don't like the shade of these anterior crowns that they got, or it might be that they felt like the doctor was too rough with them, or, but some of the time I think people today, more than they ever did in the past, they just want something for free. And maybe I'm getting harsh, I don't think that's always the case, but it's how do you filter through those calls? And luckily I have somebody who's really great who filters through most of them, but it's so emotional on that doctor, and especially the younger doctors when they have that patient complaint and they can't sleep. They can't think, and then they get gun shy to keep doing treatment. And it might be that this is just a crazy person. But they take it and you should quit if you don't care, So as long as it's a good sign that they do care. However, I think all of us as dentists, I think that's why we have the highest alcoholism rate, the highest suicide rate is, I think it is you take that work so personally, because it's not like you ever go in and try to hurt somebody. However, things just don't go right sometimes.
Sure. Well, how do you help them absorb that? I mean, I get that. it's tough when you're in a role like that. I can only imagine to not internalize that as a reflection of you as a human
Yes.
versus Katie as the dentist, right?
Yeah, we're lucky that we have a group practice, and we try to share some of those failures, because if I hear Dan talking about your failure, then it makes me realize, like, hey, it's not just me that has these happen. It's everybody has these happen, and there are some people that don't look in the mirror, that need to look in the mirror, and they need to go back and get some more training. That's a different story. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about kind of a case not going the way you want, or a patient complaining, whether it's valid or not valid. And I think having that camaraderie to share those, or having a forum. I know I used to use like the Dental Town forum, because they have like a blog where you can talk there. And it was great to be able to have other people be honest about things and say, like, hey, this didn't go well for me. Because then you recognize it's not just me, it's everybody. But when you're off by yourself, pretty soon you start to take that on, and you start to think it is just you. It's hard to do your best work in those circumstances. So I love sports psychology and these mental performance coaches and the drills that they do. I don't know if you've heard about this stuff.
No, tell me more.
Yeah. So my son is committed to play football at Florida State here this next fall. And we did the whole national tour of football stadiums. And the big programs like Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, they all have these mental health performance coach and sports psychologists, and how they mentally prepare and get you through, like, you have a bad kick. How do you go in and kick again in 2 minutes and make that field goal? And what do you have to do or think, or what do you tell yourself? You have to do the same thing. If you do a root canal that fails and you have to pull that tooth, how do you go back in and do a root canal again? And I think we can take some of that psychology and apply it to what we're doing every day.
Well, I was just going to ask, is that going to be the next thing?
I know, for sure it is.
There's a coach coming in.
Pump yourself. I've made like our doctor offices like locker rooms. We have showers. We got the Peloton bike to train.
I love it though. I mean, you're so willing to just absorb this experience and information and data as you just navigate normal life and come back and apply it to your business.
And try something new.
Yeah. So, all right, Katie, before we wrap up, it's been a great conversation. I want to ask you a couple of quick fire questions.
Sure.
Just to get you to know you better as a person.
How did I get this good looking? I know.
You can start there. So how do you get back to your community in Rochester, Minnesota? Or what's important to you? Yeah,
that is one of our top core values. It has been since the office opened in 1965. So we do the traditional mission trips all over the world. We've been to Africa, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Mexico, all over the U.S. We do the Mission of Mercy that we're on that. I was on the initial foundation board at Minnesota to bring that into Minnesota. However, we do a free dental day every September on a Friday, where it's a first come, first serve. Last year, we did $70,000 worth of free dental work that we gave away. And it's just, we open our doors at 7 at 2 of our locations, and we just work extractions, fillings, cleanings, x-rays, exams, anything. We don't do anything that has a lab bill, but everything else we do. We do what we call elevating smiles. And I got that from Bill Dorfman. He used to do Extreme Makeover on TV. I don't know if you remember that in the 90s. That, yeah. And he's a buddy I met in Vegas, and I came back, and our team, we have a team of 10 that is selected that they get to go through. So this year, I think we had 98 people apply, and they went through and selected the top 3 candidates. And then I selected the top 1, and then we redid her entire smile and did a big reveal. And we do that every year. It's just the video. People were bawling, calling me when they saw it on Facebook, just the impact. And the woman who won it just was so deserving. And you could see the difference and hear her talk about the difference in her life from having half of her teeth missing and then being in pain to be able to smile, and how people responded to her, how people treated her better, how people thought she was smarter just from having her teeth fixed. And just like the impact that has on our team, I think every day when you're drilling and filling and they're paying you a lot of money, you forget how you're really impacting their life.
I was going to ask that, like how it sounds profound, right? I mean, you're essentially
Just
changing that person's
extreme.
life, right?
Yeah.
And
Like literally changing, getting engaged, how her kids feel about her being in public with them, all of the above, just changing their life. And that's not, our team did just an awesome job. So I would highly recommend that to somebody who wants that in their practice to make an impact. We have a Salvation Army dental clinic where we provide service for a lot of immigrants, but those who are 200% below poverty and on state insurance. They only do extractions there, but all of our doctors volunteer sometime there, which is, I think, a great resource for our community because a lot of the pre-dental students in high school and college that want to go to dental school, they can go volunteer as an assistant, and they can, I think if they learn they don't want to be a dentist, that's just as valuable as them learning they do want to be a dentist. And you don't really know that till you physically put on gloves and can experience it. And is this something that's for me or not? So I'm a huge proponent of that. But the biggest thing we do is we sponsor basketball teams, football teams, baseball teams, a lot of little kids soccer, a lot of little kids baseball, because in our small community, as a small business owner, if we don't sponsor it, who is? And I feel like that's an opportunity. Our community has trusted in us. That's a way for us to help support the community, to create an environment for them to be together, be active, be healthy.
that's great you're doing that. So, I mean, everything seems like it's been geared towards work, right?
Yeah.
And giving back to your community. What's your go-to to unplug and recharge yourself outside of work?
So I have 3 kids. All 3 are in sports, and almost every sport you name, we've probably tried it or done it. And I am the crazy wrestling mom on the side yelling and screaming and probably a little too intense. My son used to swim, and I don't know if you've ever been to a swim meet, but I would yell very loud.
I have a swimmer. I've been there.
The crazy
intense.
moms.
It's hot and loud.
And you're sitting there for hours, and it's great. So I do a lot of that. I love to garden, quilt. I'm kind of ADHD. I think I'm somebody who's always doing something. I almost always have an audiobook or a book that I'm reading. So I try to do 7 books a month is my goal. And so
7, that's impressive. So
yeah, my husband beats me.
Really?
I know, it's depressing.
Was this a competition or?
Well, yeah, he is smarter than me, so I have to give him that.
Since you dove into books, what's your go-to podcast, book,
yes,
or other item that just helps you out? I know you mentioned that you listened one on your way here today.
Yeah. So my go-to favorite is Dave Ramsey, his entrepreneur. I don't know how to say that.
Entrepreneurial.
Yeah, leadership podcast.
Okay.
So he has several podcasts, but that one particularly I love. I read Think and Go Rich every year. I love the book Complications. I have a group of 10 books that I try to reread every at least couple of years. And so, yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's good advice. I mean, for folks, we'll see out there if anybody can beat your number. We'll see if maybe some people leave comments or whatnot. That's impressive. 7 a month. So, Katie, thanks again.
Now, on Audible, you can put it on double speed.
Oh.
I don't know if you knew that. And
so you got a little hack here.
I got a hack.
I want to say thanks for coming again. And to everybody listening to the podcast today. But before we go, you've been so open about the struggles, the wins. What's the one thing that makes you the most proud when you think back to all the work that you and your team have done at Northwest Dental Group?
I would say very few dentists are able to say, like, this is the first practice I joined. The partner that I joined, I still work with today, Dr. Sperling. He's an incredible man. My assistant has been with me the entire 20 years. Those relationships, particularly with those 2 people, but also like the other doctors that have been with me 12 and 14 years, like they're just incredible people. I have a doctor who was my partner in residency that joined me 9 years ago. He's awesome. And I get to work with him every day. And So I think very few people are lucky enough to have that and have those friendships, not just co-workers. We're actually friends and they genuinely care about me and I genuinely care about them. I think that's what I'm most proud about.
Nice. That's a great thing to be proud about. I mean, it sounds like you've got a good culture, built some really good relationships.
Yeah, just got lucky.
Your coworkers, the community, everywhere. That's awesome. Well, thanks again, Katie. Appreciate you attending. And for everybody listening, this is it for our first episode of The Doers, where we go behind the scenes and get the real story from those running and building dental practices. If you like the conversation I had today with Katie Post, tune in next time to see who we have on the next episode of The Doers. Until next time, keep doing the work.